Overseas now, and Israel's military has denied striking a so-called safe zone near Rafah after Gaza health workers said 21 people were killed by tank fire. And a warning, some viewers may find the following footage distressing. Palestinian officials say more than 60 others were injured in the shelling. Emergency services say these strikes hit Al-Mawasi, which Israel had previously designated as a safe area for Palestinian civilians. The IDF says it didn't shell the area. Well, for more on these developments, we're joined by Global Affairs editor John Lyons. John, thanks for your time. What do you make of the IDF's denials here of any involvement in the latest fatal strike on Rafah?
Well, Catherine, it's a complete mystery. The first strike, the fire, of course, from a day ago, which was dreadful. Initially, the Israeli army said, that was a targeted precision strike. Then, with the world outcry from Emmanuel Macron and others, they changed that to, it was a tragic mistake. I've been in Gaza during some wars where they've denied absolutely something and then months later admitted it. So 21 more people have died now in Al-Mawasi, which is right on the beach. That's where everybody was urged to go. These two latest bombings or attacks, 45 killed in the Rafah fire and 21 today, are both in areas where Palestinians were encouraged by the Israeli army to move. So it's really weird if the Israeli army is saying that we didn't do this, then what are they actually saying? I don't think Hamas is firing tank shells. It appears to be tank shells. Hamas doesn't have tanks. So really hard to know exactly what's going on. What we do know is that a catastrophic situation is getting worse all the time and more international pressure on Israel.
You mentioned the international pressure there. I mean, what has the global response been to this second fatal attack? I know that it has been discussed at the White House.
Well, I think Washington's trying to work out what's going on here. After the first one of Rafah, the dreadful fire where children were burnt alive, horrible images that thankfully haven't been presented on television here, Washington has said that didn't cross the red line for the White House, which it makes you wonder what is the red line, but Washington hopefully will define that at some point. They are trying to work out this latest one now. If it's proved that Israel has now, for a second time in 24 hours, hit an area that was designated by them as a safe zone, I think Washington would have to say, enough's enough, this can't go on. The world will not let this go on.
On the politics of it, for Benjamin Netanyahu, how more isolating is this becoming for him?
Very much so, Catherine, and even within the Jewish community here in Australia now, increasing divisions. For example, the Jewish Council of Australia has put out a statement a short time ago calling on the Australian government, and this is a Jewish group, calling for the Albanese government to place sanctions on Israel to quote, stop Israel committing the crime of genocide, what they say. And the Jewish Council of Australia says with each passing day it becomes clearer that Israel is a rogue state and that what is happening in Gaza is completely incompatible with our Jewish values. So I think not just internationally, Emmanuel Macron says he's outraged by the one that caused the fire. I think within the Jewish community around the world now and in Australia, there's growing divisions about what is Israel actually achieving with this war. They say they killed 2 Hamas fighters, but they killed 43 or 45 civilians, women and children yesterday. Is that ratio, if it is true they killed 2, is 2 to 45 an acceptable proportionate ratio? That's Israel's problem. Because under the International Criminal Court, of course, one thing that they'll look at, a war crime is if your response is disproportionate. Is killing 2 for 45 disproportionate?
And just sticking on the politics side of things, obviously there's a US election coming up in November. This is going to be even more difficult as the days go on for the Biden administration to navigate.
That's right. It's a devilish dilemma for President Biden because on one side he's got the strong pro-Israeli support in the Congress, but on the other side he's got 4 or 5 states where the Arab American community is saying enough's enough. We are not turning up on election day in November, which in Michigan will deliver Michigan. The Democrats would lose Michigan if that's the case on latest polling, deliver that to Donald Trump, which is quite a weird situation that people who are angry at what's going on in Gaza would help Donald Trump be elected. But they're saying we don't care, we want to punish Joe Biden for his unqualified support for Israel. It's quite extraordinary politics.
On the humanitarian side of things, we heard in that report there that the US port, which has been delivering that humanitarian aid into Gaza, has paused for a moment. There are warnings from the World Health Organization as well that Israel's offensive could lead to the closure of Rafah's last remaining hospital. Where does that leave the area?
Well, 26 hospitals have been destroyed. There's no aid coming in now through Rafah, which was the main crossing with Egypt anyway. The Israeli tanks moved in there about 2 weeks ago, sealed that off. So there's no aid coming at all through Rafah, not much through Kerem Shalom, the other crossing into Israel, and very little in the north. Cindy McCain from the World Food Programme says that there is a full-blown famine now in the north of Gaza, and she thinks it's spreading south. So with no food and water coming in, more and more people are dying right now. You see the pictures coming out of Rafah. You hear what the doctors, for me, one of the most reliable sources that I listen to are the doctors in the hospitals in Rafah. They tend to tell you what's going on, and they are saying in the remaining hospitals they've never seen anything as terrible as this. Kids walking around, orphaned kids of 2 and 3 year old, children burying children, parents putting name tags on their children in case they're blown up and they can't identify the body parts. So it is worse than it's ever been, and sadly it's getting even worse by the day.